I didn't expect much on my birthday. That's what I kept telling myself as I got dressed for work. Just another Tuesday, nothing special, no reason to hope for a call or a text. After 4 years, I knew better. Still, I checked my phone before leaving the apartment. Nothing. At work, the day played out like any other: meetings, emails, small talk about the weekend. Around lunchtime, Nina from marketing came over with a single cupcake and a tiny plastic candle. "Happy birthday," she said, smiling. "We didn't forget." I chuckled, though it was more a sound than a feeling. I thanked her, blew out the candle, and cracked a joke about getting older. Everyone clapped, then returned to their desks. It was sweet, really, but it only made the emptiness more obvious. After work, I stopped at the grocery store and grabbed a small bottle of wine. I told the cashier I was celebrating something minor. She gave me a knowing nod and said nothing else. At home, I poured myself a glass, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed onto the couch. The cupcake sat untouched on the counter. My phone still remained blank. I stared at it until the screen dimmed and turned off. The worst part wasn't the forgetting, it was how normal it had become. No card, no text, no mention. I kept telling myself that adults don't need birthdays, that I shouldn't care. But deep down, I did. I always did, every year. When the wine was gone, I brushed my teeth, turned off the lights, and went to bed early. The room was quiet, but my mind wasn't. 2 weeks later, Ivy had the kind of birthday party I'd never even dreamed of. The photos started flooding in. Ivy Sweet 16. Mom had booked a rooftop restaurant, complete with string lights and a hired DJ. Everyone looked like they belonged on a magazine cover. Ivy stood in the center, glowing like the star of a movie I wasn't even invited to. I hadn't planned on going. I'd muted the family chat, ignored the messages about party plans, and told myself I was done trying to fit in. But the night before, Ivy called. "Please come," she said softly. "It wouldn't feel right without you." Her voice was gentle, catching me off guard. Ivy had never been cruel, she just got used to being the one they celebrated. She didn't create the divide between us, she was simply handed the better side. So, I agreed. The venue was breathtaking. Ivy wore a deep blue dress, her hair curled, makeup perfect. My parents floated from guest to guest, proudly retelling stories of her accomplishments, her grades, her volunteering, her future. No one asked about me. I stayed near the back, sipping flat soda, offering polite smiles when someone glanced my way. Then came the speech. Dad tapped his glass. "We're so proud of you, Ivy," he said, his voice cracking. "You're kind, brilliant, and full of promise. And to show you just how much we believe in you." Mom stepped forward, holding a set of keys. "It's parked outside, sweetheart." The room went silent for a moment before it erupted in applause. Ivy gasped, tears streaming down her face as she hugged them both. Cameras flashed. People clapped as if this was the greatest moment in the world. I clapped too, softly, mechanically. She got a car. I didn't even get a phone call. On the drive home, my mind wouldn't stop racing. I wasn't angry about the car itself. It wasn't about the gift. It was about what it represented. The speech, the effort, the pride, everything I'd never been given, not even in pieces. That night, I stopped making excuses for them. The next morning, I couldn't look at my phone without hearing the applause echo in my head. Their cheers for Ivy were louder than anything I had ever gotten. I made coffee I didn't drink, pacing around my apartment, trying to bury myself in meaningless tasks. I kept replaying the moments I had dismissed before, the things I told myself didn't matter, or that I shouldn't let bother me. The way Mom framed Ivy's participation ribbon in the hallway, while my perfect GPA barely got a good job. How I begged for guitar lessons in middle school, only to be told money was tight. Then a week later, Ivy came home with custom riding boots. How I spent months saving for a refurbished laptop for school, while Ivy unwrapped a brand new MacBook on Christmas morning, complete with accessories and a bow. Back then, I tried to justify it. She's younger, they're learning, they'll do better next time. I told myself that so many times it became second nature, but after that party, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. It wasn't about age, it wasn't about learning, it was about who they chose to see, and who they didn't. I pulled a box from the back of my closet. I hadn't opened it since moving into my apartment. It was full of old receipts, printed emails, tax forms, the stuff I thought I might need someday but never did. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Maybe proof, maybe closure, maybe a reason to stop thinking I was overreacting. Near the bottom, I found it, a bank statement in their name. pages of transactions. Most were ordinary: groceries, utilities, gas, but one stood out. Tuition payment, Ridgeview University, $12,780. It wasn't just one, there were three, all in Ivy's name, all from the past year. I sat there staring at the numbers. I remembered Ivy bragging about her full scholarship, about how proud our parents were of her for earning it all on her own. I recalled sitting through that speech at Thanksgiving dinner, when Dad said, "We didn't have to lift a finger, she made it happen herself." They lied, to everyone, to me, to themselves, to her. And suddenly, it wasn't about the birthday, it wasn't even about the car, it was about the years of pretending, the quiet, careful calculations made in rooms I was never invited into. I stared at the paper until the ink blurred, then I folded it, slid it into an envelope, and placed it on my desk. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew who needed to see it. The call came 3 days later. I recognized the number immediately, and for a second, I thought about letting it go to voicemail, but something inside me, something hard and thin, made me answer. "Hi, sweetie," Mom said, her voice light, as if nothing had changed. "How are you?" I leaned against the kitchen counter. "I'm fine," I said, though my voice was flat, drained of emotion. There was a pause, just long enough to be uncomfortable, then she cleared her throat. "Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something. We're trying to figure out how to handle Ivy's car insurance," she said. "It's just until we get through the next few months. Do you think you could help cover it? Just a little?" I didn't respond right away. I stared at the envelope on my desk, the one with the tuition payments. My free hand gripped the edge of the counter. "You're serious?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended, like it had to squeeze past everything I was holding back. "Come on, Celine, you know how things are. You've always been the responsible one. You've got your own place, your job. We just figured you'd understand." I could feel the anger rising in my throat, thick and slow. "You forgot my birthday again, for the 5th year in a row, and now you're calling me to ask for money for Ivy's car." "Oh, don't be dramatic," she replied, exasperated. "You know we love you, but Ivy's still starting out. She's only 16, we're just trying to give her the best start we can." I pressed my fingers into my temple, trying to hold back the wave of frustration threatening to break. "This isn't about the car," I said, my voice growing firmer. "It's about everything. It's about how you've treated me like I don't exist, like I'm just convenient." "That's not fair," she said quickly. "We've done our best for both of you. You were always the one who didn't need as much." Her words landed like a slap, not because they were new, but because they were familiar, strong, independent, fine on your own. No one ever asked what it took to get there. "I can't do this," I whispered. "Celine." I hung up. The silence that followed was immediate and suffocating. I stood there, hand still on the counter, breathing hard as if I'd just run a race. My cheeks burned, my eyes stung, but no tears came. I crossed the room, grabbed the envelope, and held it in both hands. My fingers trembled. I knew it was time to stop waiting for them to see me. It was time to make them look. I texted them the next morning, short, direct. "We need to talk. All of us, Sunday." Mom responded almost immediately, "Of course, looking forward to it." Dad didn't reply. Ivy sent a thumbs up emoji. I spent the next few days rehearsing what I was going to say, rewriting it over and over in my head, then discarding it and starting again. No version ever felt like enough, but I wasn't going there for their comfort. I was going to make them sit with what I had carried. Sunday came. The house looked the same as always, too clean, too bright, like nothing unpleasant had ever touched it. I rang the doorbell, though I still had my key. Mom opened the door, smiling as if I were just home for a visit. I didn't smile back. They were already sitting in the living room, Dad at one end of the couch, arms crossed, bracing himself. Mom sat next to him, hands folded tightly in her lap. Ivy curled up in the armchair by the window, nervous but trying to smile. "Thanks for being here," I said, though I didn't mean it. "There's something I need to say, and I need you to hear it all the way through." Mom nodded quickly. "Of course, sweetheart." I took a deep breath, reached into my bag, and pulled out the envelope. I didn't hand it to anyone, I just held it. "You forgot my birthday again," I started. 5 years in a row, no card, no text, and I kept telling myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need anything from you. They shifted uncomfortably but remained silent. "But then you threw Ivy that party, you gave speeches, you cried, you gave her a car, and I clapped like I wasn't dying inside. Mom's eyes were already glassy. Dad stared at the floor. I found your bank statements, the ones showing you've been paying Ivy's tuition. After telling me for years you couldn't help me, after I worked 2 jobs to finish school and keep my apartment. There was a long pause. Mom sniffled. We didn't mean to hurt you, she said softly, we just. Ivy's so young, she needed more help. You've always been so strong. I looked at her, then at Dad, who still hadn't spoken. That's the story you've told yourselves, that I didn't need anything because I never asked. That strength means not deserving support. I turned to Ivy, who had gone quiet. Her eyes were wide, almost guilty. I didn't ask for any of this, she said softly. I didn't even know about the tuition. I know, I replied, and I don't blame you, but you still got everything I was told we couldn't afford. You got the best of them, and I got what was left. The silence pressed in, thick enough to feel like it could suffocate me. If I don't matter to you the same way she does, I said finally, then I'm done. I won't keep showing up for people who can't even see me. And then I walked out for the last time without looking back. I didn't block their numbers immediately, but when the silence stretched longer than I expected, I knew what I had to do. On Tuesday, I blocked their numbers. I didn't make a scene, no dramatic final words. I simply opened my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and pressed the buttons one by one. It was clinical, quiet, like closing a window before a storm. At first, the silence felt like a relief. No more waiting for messages that never came. No more pretending to be okay with their casual erasure. I woke up without that tight ache in my chest. I made coffee without scanning my notifications. I felt steady, maybe for the first time in months. I filled my time with things I'd forgotten how to love. I pulled out my old sketch pads, the ones I had stuffed away after college when work and exhaustion took over. I started hiking again early in the mornings. Before the trails got crowded, the quiet out there felt different. Honest, the wind didn't ask anything of me. I started therapy. I didn't tell anyone. I just went every Thursday at 5 p.m. to a small office that smelled faintly of lavender and old carpet. At first, I didn't know what to say. Then one day, I started talking and didn't stop, about the birthdays, the silence, how being strong became an identity I never wanted. My therapist asked me once, when did you learn that being loved meant being useful? I didn't have an answer. A week after the meeting, Ivy texted me from a different number. They're worried. You're hurting yourself, Celine. This isn't healthy. You don't have to cut us off like this. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't reply. Ivy meant well. I knew that. She always had. But she hadn't lived the quiet rooms I had. She hadn't sat at birthday dinners that never had a seat for her. She hadn't been the one who made herself small to keep the family comfortable. And she still didn't understand that this time, walking away wasn't about punishment. It was about clarity. It wasn't just the silence that was healing me. It was knowing I chose it. Some nights, I still felt the old pull. Check your phone. See if they called. Maybe they finally understand. But I sat with that feeling. Let it wash over me like a wave. I didn't have to fight anymore. And when the silence stayed, I let it, until one Saturday, someone rang my doorbell. I opened the door, and there he was, my father, standing on the porch like someone unsure if he should apologize or just leave. He looked smaller than I remembered, older, his hands were shoved into his pockets, and he kept his eyes just slightly off mine. Can I come in? He asked. I didn't answer, but stepped aside. He sat on the edge of the couch like it wasn't his place anymore. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then, finally, we didn't mean to hurt you, Celine. We thought we were doing what was best. Ivy needed more. And you? You always figured things out. I sat across from him, hands folded in my lap. You made me figure things out. He flinched, like the words hit harder than he expected. I'm not strong because you believed in me, I said. I'm strong because I didn't have a choice. Every time I needed something, you told me we couldn't afford it. But somehow, you always found a way for Ivy. He didn't argue, just nodded slowly, staring down at the floor like it might hold an answer he hadn't found in me. When he left, I didn't walk him to the door. Later that night, Ivy called. This time, I picked up. I need to tell you something, she said quietly. The scholarship, it wasn't real. I didn't say anything. They told everyone I got a full ride, but they've been paying everything, taking out loans. They didn't want you to know. They didn't want me to feel guilty. I closed my eyes. But you knew. Not at first, she admitted, but yeah, I figured it out, and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't want them to do it. Celine, I swear I didn't ask for any of it. I believed her, that was the hardest part. She never asked for the pedestal, she was just born into the right role. We sat in silence on the phone for a long time, breathing through something too old to name. I just wanted to be your sister, she said softly, and I realized for the first time that I might want that too. A year later, my apartment felt different, not bigger, not quieter, just mine, the kind of stillness that didn't ache anymore. I'd started a new job a few months ago. My boss actually remembered my name, asked how I was doing, thanked me for the work I did. It still caught me off guard sometimes, how something so small could feel so unfamiliar. Ivy and I talk now, not every day, and not about everything, but there's effort. She asks about my life without expectation, listens without defending our parents. We meet for lunch sometimes, and once, she showed me a poem she wrote about sisters who grow up in different houses under the same roof. It made me cry, though I didn't tell her that. Mom and Dad haven't reached out again, I don't know if they ever will. Some part of me used to ache for that, but now it just feels like a fact, like gravity, like something I can live with. I spent my birthday alone this year. I didn't throw a party, didn't post about it, didn't wait for anyone else to remember. I baked myself a small cake, vanilla, just like that cupcake from work the year they forgot me for the 5th time. I set one candle in the middle, no singing, no applause, just me in my kitchen, barefoot, the smell of sugar in the air. I lit the candle, watched the flame flicker for a few seconds, then closed my eyes and breathed in. I didn't make a wish, I didn't need to. When I opened my eyes, the room looked exactly the same, but something in me had shifted, quite certain. This time, I didn't need anyone else to show up.